The transport ship from Earth descended through the silver clouds of the alien world Zarya. The engines hummed softly as the vessel glided toward the shining city below. Sol stood by the viewing window, watching tall towers made of metal and crystal rise like blades from the ground. Every structure reflected sunlight so brightly that the horizon looked like fire. Sol had seen many alien worlds before, but nothing like this. Zarya was not built by human hands. It was alive in a strange way. The walls seemed to breathe. The streets pulsed faintly as if carrying energy through veins. This was the heart of the Zari Dominion, a vast empire that stretched across hundreds of star systems. And Sul, a single human envoy, was about to meet its ruler. He touched the bandage wrapped around his arm. The wound still stung from the skirmish that had happened 2 days ago. Pirates had attacked the convoy on the way here. He had fought them off with the crew, taking a cut across his arm before the attackers fled. The medics wanted to heal it fully, but Sol refused. He said it was fine. A wound reminded him that peace was not won by words alone. When the ship landed on the glowing platform, a group of alien guards was already waiting. They were tall and armored, their skin a mix of black and silver scales. Their eyes glowed faint blue under their helmets. They moved with perfect coordination like machines. Sol stepped out carrying no weapon, only a small device containing the peace message from the human union. One guard stepped forward and spoke in a deep, vibrating voice. "Human, follow." "The Queen waits," Sol nodded without a word. He followed them through the gates of the Silver Court. The palace was vast beyond reason. It felt more like a living creature than a building. The floor shimmered under his boots and every wall was covered in patterns that changed when he passed by. He could feel the heat of the place, not from fire, but from energy flowing through the walls. Strange orbs floated above, casting gentle light. As he walked, alien citizens and soldiers stopped to watch. No human had ever been allowed inside the Queen's court. Sol felt their eyes on him, filled with suspicion and curiosity. But he kept walking with calm steps. His task was to speak for peace between two powerful races, both tired of endless conflict. At last they reached the main hall. The doors opened with a hiss. Inside, the ceiling was so high that the light disappeared into it. The floor was like a mirror, showing reflections of the stars. At the far end stood the throne. The Queen of Zarya sat upon it. She was tall, her form wrapped in metallic fabric that moved like liquid silver. Her crown was not of gold but made of glowing lines that floated just above her head. Her eyes were golden, bright and deep, as if they saw more than what stood before her. When Sul entered, every guard in the hall knelt. The air grew silent. He felt a wave of pressure in the room, like gravity had thickened. Still, he stood firm. The Queen's voice was soft, but it carried to every corner. "Human envoy, you walk the halls of my empire. Speak your purpose." Sol bowed his head slightly. "I am Sol, sent by the human union. I come to offer peace. Our worlds have seen enough blood. It is time we end this." The Queen leaned forward, studying him. "Peace," she repeated, her tone cold. "Your kind burns worlds in the name of peace. You build weapons while speaking of mercy. Tell me, human, why should I listen?" Sol met her gaze without fear. "Because peace benefits both of us. War will destroy what we have built. We both know that." A faint movement ran through the guards. Some shifted, ready to defend their ruler. The Queen raised one hand slightly and they froze again. Her eyes moved to the red stain seeping through Sol's sleeve. "You are injured." "It is nothing," Sol said. "Show it." Sol hesitated for a moment, but then slowly unwrapped the bandage. The wound was shallow but still raw. Blood ran down his arm, bright red against his pale skin. He thought it was nothing special. To him, it was a small injury, a reminder of his duty. But the hall fell completely silent. Every guard stiffened. Some took a step back. One of them dropped his spear and the sound echoed through the chamber. Sol looked around in confusion. The alien stared not at him but at the blood. The Queen's eyes widened slightly. She stood from her throne, her silver robes shifting like ripples on water. "That color," she whispered. "That glow," Sol looked down at his arm. Under the blood, faint red light pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. He blinked, unsure what she meant. "It's just blood," he said quietly. The Queen turned to her guards. "Do you see it?" They murmured in their native tongue, words that Sul could not understand. Their voices were full of fear. One whispered, The burning ones, it cannot be. Saul frowned. What is happening? Why are they afraid? The queen looked at him again, her expression mixed with awe and disbelief. Your kind. You should not exist. I don't understand, he said. She stepped closer, stopping only a few steps away. Her golden eyes glowed brighter now. In the oldest record of my people there was a story. A story of beings who carried the flame of life in their blood. Their wounds closed with light. Their bodies survived poisons their will never broke. The ancients called them the burning ones. We thought them long gone. Saul shook his head. That's just a story. Humans are not like that. The queen's gaze stayed fixed on the wound. And yet your blood burns before me. The guards were still kneeling, their weapons lowered. Fear filled their eyes. They whispered the same word again and again. Flamebearer. Saul felt uneasy now. He had never seen anyone react like this before. He tightened the bandage over his arm again. I didn't come here to frighten anyone. I came to talk. The queen turned back to her throne. You may speak of peace later. For now you will rest. The court will need to understand what you are. 2 guards stepped forward to escort him, though their hands trembled. As Saul followed them out of the hall, he looked once more at the queen. She watched him with an expression he could not read, part fear, part fascination. Outside the throne room, the corridors felt colder. The guards did not speak. Saul could still feel their eyes on his back. He wondered what had happened. How could a simple wound cause so much fear? When he reached the chamber prepared for him, he sat down by the window. The alien sky shimmered with silver clouds and ships moved silently through the air. He thought about Earth, about the people waiting for peace. He did not know that in this empire his blood had awakened an ancient legend that would change everything. In the great hall, the queen remained standing, staring at the place where he had stood. Her advisors approached quietly. One of them spoke. Your Majesty, the human is dangerous. The flame should have died with the ancients. The queen's voice was calm but filled with unease. And yet it lives again. In him. She looked at her hand, remembering the faint warmth she had felt when he stood near. It was not like heat from fire. It was alive, steady, and pure. She had seen many warriors bleed, but none like that. The sight had shaken even her strongest soldiers. She turned toward the massive window of her throne room and watched the human ship resting on the landing platform below. Perhaps the stories were true, she murmured. Perhaps the flame never died. It only waited. The guards behind her exchanged glances but said nothing. They were still shaken. None of them had ever seen their queen show such emotion. For the first time in many years, the ruler of the Zari dominion felt something she had forgotten: doubt. As night fell over the shining city, every Zari in the palace whispered the same thing. The human was not just an envoy, he was a sign. And somewhere in the dark, Saul sat quietly, unaware that his blood had already changed the balance between 2 worlds. The next morning began in silence. The air inside Saul's chamber was cool and bright, filled with faint light that came from the walls themselves. He had not slept much. His thoughts stayed on the strange reaction from the queen and her guards. He looked at the bandage around his arm again. The wound had almost healed overnight, though he had not used any medicine. That detail troubled him. He stretched his fingers and moved his arm slowly. It did not hurt. The cut had closed faster than normal. He tried to explain it as the work of strong immunity or advanced healing cream from the medkit. Yet deep down he felt something was different. Before he could think further, the door opened. 2 Zari guards entered. They were not the same as before. Their armor shone darker and their eyes glowed green. They looked uneasy, careful not to stand too close to him. The queen calls for you, one of them said. Saul nodded and followed them. As they walked through the long corridors, Zari workers and soldiers stopped and bowed slightly, not to him but to the ground near him. Their faces were filled with unease. Saul realized the entire palace must have heard what happened yesterday. The story had spread like fire. He walked calmly, pretending not to notice the whispers. His boots made soft sounds against the shining floor. Outside, beyond the large glass walls, the city of Zaria glittered like liquid silver. Giant airships drifted across the sky, and floating gardens hung from crystal towers. It was beautiful, but Saul could feel tension beneath that beauty. When they reached the throne hall, the great doors opened again. This time, fewer guards were present. The queen sat upon her throne, but the hall was darker. the lights dimmer than before. She looked at him with the same sharp gaze, but her voice was calm. "Human, come forward," she said. Sol stepped closer, stopping several steps away. "I asked my scholars to study the old records," the queen said. "They all confirmed the same thing. Your blood matches the description of the flame bearers." Sol frowned slightly. "That is just an old story, Your Majesty. Humans are not what those stories describe. We are ordinary beings. We bleed and break like everyone else." The queen tilted her head. "Then why do your wounds close so fast? Why does your blood glow?" My healers examined the trace of it left on the floor. "It is alive with energy we do not understand." Sol did not have an answer. He remembered the medics on his ship saying once that humans adapted quickly in alien environments, but glowing blood was not normal. "I do not know why it glows," Sol said honestly.
"But I do know that I am only here for peace."
"Whatever my blood means to your people, I have no power in it." The queen leaned back, her golden eyes still studying him. "Peace. Yes, but peace cannot be built on mystery. If your kind truly carries the flame, it could mean the rise or fall of empires. My guards dropped their spears because they believed an ancient fire had returned. Some already call you a sign from the stars. Others fear you may bring ruin. I do not want fear," Sol said quietly. "Fear ends peace before it begins." Her expression softened slightly, though her voice stayed measured. "There is a way to know the truth. The Chamber of Scars can reveal what lies beneath the skin. It tests the strength of life itself. No one has entered it and remained whole. Will you face it?" Sol looked around the hall. The guards did not meet his eyes. It was clear they expected him to refuse, yet he knew if he did, they would never trust him. "If this test brings peace between our worlds," he said, "then I will face it." A murmur spread through the hall. The queen stood. "Then prepare yourself. The chamber awaits." The Chamber of Scars lay deep beneath the palace. The walls there were old and rough, unlike the smooth metal above. The guards lit the way with glowing crystals. The air was heavy and cold. When they reached the great door, Sol saw markings carved into the stone. Strange shapes and lines circled around the frame. He could not read them, but he could feel the meaning: pain, strength, and memory. The queen arrived shortly after, surrounded by her advisors. She wore a robe of dark silver, now her crown dimmed. "This chamber," she said, "was made by the first Zari long ago. It was meant to test those who wish to lead. The walls respond to the energy of life. They cut deeper if weakness is found. No one has passed through without falling. If you survive, your truth will be known." Sol nodded once. "Then let it be known." He stepped forward. The doors opened slowly, revealing a long corridor lit by shifting light. The air moved like breath, warm and alive. When he entered, the doors sealed behind him. Inside, the walls began to move. Blades of silver grew from them like thorns. The floor trembled. Sol took a deep breath and walked forward. A blade swung across his chest, slicing his uniform. Pain flashed through him, but he kept moving. Another cut his leg, another across his arm. The blood began to flow again, red and bright. He bit down and pushed forward. He could hear his own heartbeat echo through the metal. Every few steps, more blades appeared, sharp and endless. The pain was real, but something else was happening too. His vision blurred, yet his legs did not fail. His wounds burned for a moment, then sealed again. He looked down and saw the skin closing, leaving faint scars behind. He kept walking, steady and focused. His breath grew heavy, but his steps did not slow. Outside the chamber, the queen and her guards watched through a wall of light. The advisors whispered in disbelief. One said, "He should have fallen by now." Another added, "The chamber accepts him." The queen's eyes stayed fixed on the image. She saw the blade strike again and again, but the human continued walking, his blood shining like a living flame. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Then the light inside the chamber dimmed, and the blade slowly melted back into the walls. The floor stopped moving. The doors opened. Sol stood at the other end, his shirt torn, his face marked by dried blood. But his eyes were calm. He stepped out, breathing slowly. The guards waiting outside fell silent. The queen took a single step forward. "You walked through the Chamber of Scars," she said softly. "You did not fall," Sol nodded. "I am still standing." The hall was filled with silence again. The guards lowered their weapons. One of them whispered, "The flame endures." The queen looked at her people. For the first time in years, she saw awe in their faces. No warrior, No alien of her kind had ever survived that trial, yet the human did. She turned back to Sul. What you have done will change what my people believe. They will see you as a sign. Some will kneel. Some will fear you. I do not yet know which side I will stand on. Sul looked at her with steady eyes. If fear brings war, then I will face it. If trust brings peace, then I will earn it. The queen did not speak for a long time. Then she raised her hand and the guard stepped back. You will stay in the palace until I decide what must be done. The people of Zarya must not see you yet. They are not ready. Sul bowed slightly. As you wish, Your Majesty. He turned to leave, his footsteps echoing softly against the stone floor. Behind him, the queen watched, her expression unreadable. When he was gone, one of her advisors asked, What do you believe, my queen? She answered quietly, I believe the flame has returned, and I do not know if that is a gift or a warning. That night, as Sul sat once again in his chamber, he looked down at his arm. The skin where the wound had been now carried a faint glow under the surface, fading slowly with each heartbeat. He did not feel stronger. He only felt heavier, as if he carried something far older than himself. Far above, on the palace balcony, the queen looked at the stars and whispered to the wind, Human blood carries the fire of life, and that fire will not be tamed. The wind carried her words into the night across the shining city of Zarya, where every light reflected the start of something the galaxy had forgotten, the return of the unbroken human spirit. The morning sun rose over the silver city of Zarya. The towers glowed softly under the light. From his chamber window, Sul watched the sky slowly turn from white to pale gold. He had not rested much. His body felt fine, but his mind was full of thoughts. He remembered the chamber of scars, the blades, the pain, and how he had walked through without falling. He did not understand how his body had healed. The memory of it still confused him. The queen had spoken of old stories and flame-bearers, but he was only a human soldier, not a legend. He wondered if his blood truly carried something special or if it was all misunderstanding. A soft knock came at the door. A young Zari attendant stepped inside. She was smaller than the guards and wore a robe of silver cloth. Her voice trembled as she spoke. The queen asks for your presence, Envoy Sol. He nodded. I will come. She hesitated before turning away. Many are waiting to see you today. Be careful. Some do not wish to believe what they saw. Sol followed her through the long corridors again. The palace seemed quieter than before. The guards they passed looked away when he walked by. Some bowed slightly, while others tightened their grips on their weapons. He could feel the tension in the air. When he reached the main hall, he saw more people than before. The queen sat on her throne, and beside her stood several elders dressed in white robes. Behind them were the royal guards, their armor shining under the light of the ceiling crystals. Everyone's eyes turned to him the moment he entered. The queen raised her hand. Come forward, human. Sol stepped forward until he stood in the center of the hall. The elders whispered among themselves. He could hear fragments of their words, some calling him a sign, others calling him a danger. One of the elders spoke aloud. This human has walked through the chamber of scars. The walls did not claim him. We saw his wounds close as if time itself obeyed him. But a single test is not enough. The chamber may have misread his life force. Another elder added, We must see if the flame is truly in him or only a trick of human medicine. The queen listened without interrupting. Her golden eyes watched Sul carefully. When they finished speaking, she turned to him. Will you allow another test? Not of pain this time, but of life. You will face the ancient crystal. It draws energy from the living. If you are what they say, it will not harm you. Sul hesitated for a moment. If it helps you find the truth, I will face it. The queen stood from her throne. Then let the test begin. They moved to another chamber, smaller and darker. In the center stood a large crystal, tall as a man, glowing faint blue. The air around it shimmered and a soft hum filled the space. The guards formed a circle around the room. The queen watched from behind a barrier of light. This crystal, she said, was made from the heart of our world. It feeds on life energy to measure strength and purity. No being can touch it for long without pain. If you are like us, you will fall. If you are something more, you will endure. Sol stepped toward it. The surface of the crystal pulsed gently as if it were breathing. He placed his hand on it. At first it was cold. Then the cold became sharp. He felt the energy pull at his arm like something trying to drain him. He gritted his teeth and stood firm. The crystal's color deepened, shifting from blue to red. The guards gasped. Sparks of light ran through its core. The queen leaned forward. "What is happening?" she asked quietly. The elder beside her shook his head. "It is reacting to him." The light spread through the room, touching every wall. The hum grew louder. Sol's hand began to glow faintly with the same red light. The pain faded, replaced by warmth. He could feel something inside him responding to the crystal, not fighting it but calming it. The bright red slowly softened into gold, then silence. The crystal stopped glowing. Sol stepped back unharmed. The room was filled with stunned faces. The elders whispered rapidly. "The flame accepts him," one said. The energy did not feed on him. It obeyed him. The queen walked around the barrier, stepping closer. "How do you feel, human?" Sol took a slow breath. "Tired, but fine." She looked at the crystal. It took life from every being who touched it. Yet it bowed to you. "I did nothing," Sol said quietly. "I only stood still." The queen looked at him for a long moment, then turned to her people. "You see what I see. The flame of the ancients lives in him. He carries what we thought lost forever. You feared him, but he does not wish for war." The hall filled with murmurs. Some guards fell to one knee. Others whispered prayers. The queen raised her hand for silence. "This man came here for peace," she said. "We will treat him with the honor due to a guest of the flame." The guards struck their spears against the floor, the sound echoing through the hall. Sol stood quietly, unsure how to respond. When the queen approached him again, her tone softened. "You have done what none of us expected. Tell me, Sol, what do you believe this power means?" He looked around the hall and said slowly, "Maybe it means that no life, no matter how small, should be forgotten. Every spark has value. Maybe your story and ours were never so different." Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if thinking deeply. "You speak like one who has seen too much war." "I have seen what it does to hope," Sol answered. The queen was silent for a while. Then she said, "You will stay in the palace as my guest. I wish to learn more about your kind." Sol bowed slightly. "As you command." Later that evening, he was taken to a new chamber near the upper halls. From the balcony, he could see the endless silver city below. Lights floated in the air like stars. He stood there thinking about everything that had happened. He wondered if the queen truly believed in peace or if she only wanted to understand the strange power that seemed to follow him. He also wondered if this flame the Zari spoke of was real or only something that humans had forgotten long ago. As he thought, a quiet knock came at the door again. The same young attendant entered, holding a tray of food. She placed it on the table, then bowed. "Envoy, I saw what happened today. The people are speaking of you everywhere. What are they saying?" Sol asked. "They call you the living flame. Some believe you will bring balance. Others fear you will bring change." Sol gave a small nod. "Change always brings both." She looked nervous. "You are not afraid of them?" He smiled faintly. "Fear does not build bridges. Only courage does." The attendant seemed to relax a little. "The queen has not left the hall since the test. She speaks with her advisors. I think she is troubled." Sol looked out the window again. Sometimes truth troubles those who built their world on stories. The attendant left quietly. Sol remained by the window, watching the stars appear one by one. Inside the throne hall, the queen sat alone. The crystal now rested in the center, its glow faint and golden. Her advisors stood behind her, waiting for her decision. One of them said, "Your Majesty, the people will not stay silent. They already gather outside the court. Some demand that the human be declared a messenger. Others want him exiled." The queen's voice was low but steady. "They fear what they do not understand. Yet fear cannot rule us." "Then what will you do?" the advisor asked. She looked at the glowing crystal. "I will know the truth from the human himself. Tomorrow he will stand before the council. Let the whole court see what kind of being he truly is." That night, Sol did not sleep again. He sat on the balcony, staring at the moon above Zaria. He felt small against the vastness of the alien sky. The faint gold glow under his skin had not faded. He pressed his hand against his arm and thought about Earth. His people were far away, unaware that one of their own had just changed the belief of an empire. He did not know what would come next, but he knew one thing. Fear and faith often walk the same road, and he was now walking between them. As the night wind moved across the city, the silver towers hummed softly. carrying whispers of the day's events. In the great palace, the queen stood by her window watching the same stars. She thought of the human's calm eyes, of his blood that glowed like fire, and of the courage that did not come from power but from will. She finally understood why her guards had dropped their spears. They had not seen a weapon. They had seen something they could not break. And she, the ruler of countless worlds, felt something new in her heart: respect. The next morning the sun rose over Zaria with a soft golden light, reflecting off the silver towers like a river of molten metal. Sol stood in his chamber, looking out over the city. He could hear distant hums from the floating ships and the movement of people preparing for the day. He did not feel nervous. The tests had passed, but he knew the most difficult challenge was still ahead: winning the trust of the Zari people, and most importantly, the queen herself. A quiet knock came at the door. The same young attendant entered. She carried a small tray with water and food.
She seemed hesitant.
"Envoy Sol," she said softly, "the queen wishes to see you again. She asked that you come alone." Sol nodded. "I will be there shortly." The corridors were calm. Sol noticed that some guards and attendants watched him with curiosity rather than fear. Yesterday's trials had left their mark on everyone. Whispers followed him as he walked, but he ignored them. He had learned long ago that fear could distract, but courage kept the path steady. When he reached the throne hall, the queen was already standing near the balcony, overlooking the city. Her golden eyes shone, reflecting the sunlight. She turned to him as he approached, her expression unreadable. "You passed the chamber," she said, her voice steady but softer than before. "You survived the crystal." "You did not falter." Sol bowed slightly. "I only followed through what you asked. I did not think of myself as extraordinary." The queen studied him. She walked closer, her robes shifting like liquid metal. "I do not understand your kind," she admitted. "Humans speak of peace, yet you fight with unmatched will. You bleed like any creature, yet your wounds do not seem to claim you. You calm even the crystal of life itself. How can this be?" Sol met her gaze. "I do not know why my body reacts this way. I am only a human, but my mind chooses not to break. My body follows." The queen looked away for a moment, staring at the city below. "Your presence troubles me," she said. "Not because you are dangerous, but because you remind me of what my people have forgotten. Strength is not only power. Courage is not only the will to fight. You have shown endurance that cannot be taught. It comes from something older, something we have lost." Sol remained silent. He did not want to explain further. Words could never capture the way humans endured fear, pain, and uncertainty. Action spoke louder than any declaration. The queen turned back to him, her eyes sharper now. "My guards feared you yesterday. They dropped their spears before you even drew a weapon, and yet you did not threaten them. You only walked through their chambers and trials with calm. That is the most unsettling part." "I did not come to fight them," Sol said simply. "I came to speak, to offer peace." Her gaze softened and she leaned on the balcony railing. "Peace is not easy to accept when your kind has built empires on fear. But perhaps I have been blind too long. Perhaps my people and I have forgotten the value of life and courage beyond strength." Sol looked at her. "Fear often builds walls where there should be bridges. I only hope your people will choose to see what is in front of them, not just what they imagine." The queen's hand rested against the railing, and for a moment she seemed lost in thought. Her advisors whispered quietly behind her, but she did not hear them. Her mind focused entirely on Sol. "You carry something my people believed extinct," she said. "The flame in your blood is a reminder that life can endure beyond expectations. You do not fight like a conqueror. You fight because you must. That is what terrifies and fascinates me at the same time." Sol did not know how to respond. He had lived many battles, faced countless dangers, yet nothing had ever stirred the awe he saw reflected in her people. "Tell me," the queen continued, her voice now calm, "why do you endure so much without anger? Humans fight, yet you walked through blades and energy that would have killed anyone else. Why?" Sol thought for a moment. "Pain reminds me I am alive. Fear reminds me I must act. Anger clouds judgment. Endurance is not about fighting the impossible, but about continuing even when everything tells you to stop. That is all." Her golden eyes narrowed slightly and she stepped closer. "Your words, they are unlike any I have heard. Your courage is not only in the body but in the mind. That is dangerous, human, dangerous to my empire and perhaps to the galaxy itself." Sol lowered his gaze slightly. "I do not seek danger. I only seek understanding. Conflict comes when fear and pride rule. I hope your people will see reason before fear decides. The queen remained silent for a moment. Then she nodded slowly.
Perhaps you are the first human who could truly speak to us.
Not through force, not through words alone, but through endurance and spirit. That is something we have lost, something my empire forgot. She stepped back and looked over the city again. My guards and people may fear you still, but I will begin to understand. Your presence here may bring the change I have long avoided, whether I am ready or not. Sol felt the weight of her words. He had not intended to become a symbol. He had only come to offer peace. Yet somehow the act of standing, of enduring, had already started to shift the balance in this alien empire. You will stay in the palace, she said finally. Not as a prisoner, but as a guest. My people need to witness your courage. They need to understand that strength does not always come from domination, but from resolve. Sol bowed. I will follow your guidance, Your Majesty. The queen's gaze lingered on him for a moment longer. It is strange, she said softly. A wounded human has reminded me of what my empire has forgotten. The world can change with a single spark. Sol did not reply. He only watched her, understanding that this was the first step in a journey neither of them fully understood yet. Later, Sul was led to a quiet chamber where he could rest. He looked at his arm, still carrying a faint glow beneath the healed skin. The memory of the crystal's energy pulsing through him was vivid. His body had responded to the test in ways he could not explain. He thought of Earth, of his people, and of the humans who had trained him to endure fear, pain, and uncertainty. He realized that this strength, this calm, was not just in his blood. It was in every human who had chosen to stand even when the odds seemed impossible. Outside, the palace continued its rhythm. Guards patrolled the corridors, citizens moved about their duties, and the queen spoke with her advisors. But inside, a quiet shift was taking place. The idea of fear was being replaced with curiosity, respect, and even awe. That evening, a messenger arrived with a small note from the queen. It instructed Sol to prepare for a meeting with the Council of Elders. They wished to speak with him and witness the truth for themselves. Sol knew this would not be easy. The council was made up of the most rigid and traditional Zari leaders, many of whom had never seen a human before. As he prepared, he thought about what he would say. He had already endured the chamber and the crystal. Now he would face a test of words, of trust, and of understanding. He knew that if he failed here, all the progress made would be lost. The next day, Sul was escorted to the Great Hall again. The Council of Elders had gathered, and the room was filled with anticipation. Every seat was occupied. The guards were tense, some kneeling, others holding their weapons loosely. The queen stood at the center, flanked by her advisors. The elders' eyes were sharp, filled with suspicion. One of them, a tall Zari with silver markings on his face, spoke first. Human, we have heard of your trials. You have walked through the Chamber of Scars and survived the Crystal of Life. Yet we do not fully believe in what we cannot touch ourselves. Show us who you truly are. Sol stepped forward calmly. I am a human. I do not seek to conquer. I do not carry weapons beyond what is necessary. I came here to speak and to endure. That is all I offer, the elders whispered among themselves. Some shook their heads, others leaned forward. The queen's eyes met Sol's. She nodded slightly, giving him silent support. One elder rose. Your body has endured pain that would break any being. Your blood shines with energy unknown to us. Tell us, human, why do you not fall? Sol looked around the hall. I fall every day in small ways, but I stand again. Endurance is not the absence of pain. It is the choice to keep moving even when pain exists. That is all humans do. We do not fight for glory. We fight for life, for hope, and for those who cannot fight for themselves. The room was silent. Even the guards stopped moving. The elders stared, their expressions unreadable. Finally, the queen spoke. He speaks truth not with pride but with understanding. That is what makes him different. That is what terrifies those who believe only strength matters. Humanity endures not through fear but through courage and will. Sol bowed slightly. I only wish peace, Your Majesty. The queen's gaze softened. Then you shall have it. But first, the council must understand the meaning of what they have seen. The human has passed the trials, and his spirit is stronger than our fears. For the first time in the hall, a few elders nodded. Some still hesitated, but the seed of understanding had been planted. Sol realized that endurance was more than surviving blades or crystals. It was about standing firm in the face of doubt and fear. That alone had begun to change the Zari people. The sun rose over Zaria, spilling gold across the silver towers. The city shimmered like liquid metal, reflecting the hopes and fears of its people. Sol stood quietly in his chamber, looking down at the bustling streets below. His bandaged arm, now fully healed, no longer glowed, but he felt the warmth of yesterday's trials still within him. Today, he would meet the citizens of Zaria. The queen had commanded that he appear before the palace court, not just her advisors. The Council of Elders had agreed, after much debate, to witness the truth firsthand. Sol knew that how he behaved today could determine the future of two worlds. As he walked through the corridors, the palace felt different. The air seemed lighter, almost welcoming. Guards who had once watched him with fear now moved aside respectfully. Some whispered words he did not understand, but he could feel the change. Whispers of awe and disbelief followed him, not hostility. He entered the grand hall. The queen stood at the center, flanked by her guards and the Council of Elders. Behind them, citizens of the Zari Dominion had gathered. Some had come from far regions, curious to see the human who had survived the impossible. Their eyes were wide, filled with caution and anticipation. The queen raised her hand. Let all of Zaria witness the human called Sol. Let them see not only his trials but his spirit. Let the truth guide us, not fear. Sol stepped forward. He kept his head high, his shoulders straight. He could feel countless eyes upon him, yet he did not falter. He had faced blades, crystal, and doubt. Now he faced the gaze of an entire empire. The first words came from a young guard, trembling as he spoke. We have seen him walk through pain. We have seen his blood glow. And yet he did not strike us, did not attack. He only endured. A murmur passed through the crowd. Some citizens fell to their knees instinctively. Others whispered their amazement to each other. The queen's golden eyes met Sol's. Speak, human. Tell them why you came. Sol took a deep breath. I came from Earth because our worlds have suffered long enough. Humans do not seek war for glory. We fight when we must, and we endure because life is precious. I'm only one human, but I stand for many. I stand for the choice to survive, to endure, and to protect what matters. He paused, letting the words sink in. I do not wish to frighten anyone. I do not wish to conquer. I only wish for peace. If my endurance has brought fear, then know this, it is not my intention. It is simply the way humans continue, even when everything seems impossible. The hall was silent. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. The Council of Elders whispered among themselves, some shaking their heads, others staring in wonder. One elder, a tall Zari with silver markings, spoke. We have studied his blood, his trials, and his spirit. Yet seeing him speak, it is different. There is no deceit. There is only truth. I do not understand how this is possible. The queen's voice cut through the whispers. It is possible because he is human. Not as a weapon, not as a threat, but as a being who endures and inspires. That is strength we have forgotten. A younger guard stepped forward. If he is not a threat, then why do our bodies feel unsettled near him? The queen turned to the guard. Because the human reminds us that life and courage are more powerful than fear. He shows us that endurance does not come from control or domination, but from will. That is why your fear melted yesterday. You saw truth, not violence. The crowd's whispers grew softer. The citizens began to look at Sol differently, no longer as an intruder but as a living symbol. Mothers whispered to their children, elders nodded quietly, and soldiers lowered their weapons fully. Sol looked at the queen. Your people do not need to fear me. They only need to understand that courage is more powerful than any weapon. The queen studied him for a long moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, she stepped forward. She lowered her head slightly, a gesture that stunned even her closest advisors. Human soul, she said, you have walked through pain and trials that no Zari has survived. You have shown endurance, courage, and restraint. For this I offer respect and acknowledgement. She motioned to her guards. Rise, all of you. Let the human stand as a guest of the flame. Let him see that fear no longer rules this hall. The guards stood slowly, some still hesitant, but the command from their queen carried weight they could not ignore. Sol's heart remained calm, but he could sense the shift. The walls that had separated their peoples were beginning to crumble. One of the elders stepped forward. Queen, will this human remain in our palace? If so, how shall we treat him? As a guest, as an ally, or as something else? The queen's gaze swept across the hall, then returned to Sol. He will remain as a guest, not because we trust him blindly, but because we trust the proof of his spirit. Let all of Zaria see that endurance and courage can change hearts more than fear ever could. Sol bowed slightly. I will honor your trust and your hospitality. The queen's lips curved into a faint smile. Then perhaps this is the first day of true understanding between our peoples. The crowd remained quiet, absorbing every word. Then slowly they began to clap, first softly, then louder, until the entire hall resounded with a rhythm of recognition and respect. Sol felt the weight of their attention, but he did not falter. He had not come for applause. He had come to show that humanity could endure even when the odds were against them. The queen stepped closer to Sol. Tell me, human, what do you feel now? I feel hope, Sol replied. Not just for myself, but for your people as well. The flame in all of us can guide the way forward if we choose to follow it. She nodded. Perhaps that is the lesson we have needed for centuries. That courage is not measured by power, but by the will to stand even when the world doubts you. The citizens of Zaria continued to watch, silent but attentive. Soldiers lowered their weapons entirely. Guards knelt again, this time out of respect, not fear. The elders whispered quietly among themselves, many nodding in agreement. Sol looked around. He had come alone with only a message of peace, yet he realized that he had done more than survive trials. He had reminded an entire empire of something they had almost forgotten, the value of life, courage, and endurance. The queen raised her hand again. Let it be known throughout Zaria that the human soul is recognized not as a threat, but as a symbol of endurance. Let his courage remind us that even when pain and fear exist, will and hope are stronger. The crowd's response was immediate. They began to kneel, bowing to Sol in recognition of his courage and spirit. Soldiers and citizens alike followed the example. The queen watched, her golden eyes reflecting pride and wonder. Sol lowered his head slightly, not out of arrogance, but respect. He had endured trials that would have crushed many beings, yet he understood that the greatest victory was not physical survival. It was the awakening of respect and understanding in those who once feared him. The queen stepped forward once more. You will remain in my palace for as long as you choose, Sol. Your presence has reminded us that courage can change hearts more than power ever will. I hope this will be the start of lasting peace between our worlds. Sol nodded. It will be, Your Majesty. As long as we remember that courage and endurance are stronger than fear. The hall erupted in soft cheers and claps. Citizens who had once watched with suspicion now smiled and whispered among themselves. Soldiers and guards stood tall, their respect clear. The elders nodded in acknowledgement, some even smiling faintly. Outside, the city of Zaria glimmered like silver flames in the sunlight. For the first time in many years, the Empire's people felt hope. Not because of conquest or power, but because one human had shown them the strength of spirit, the value of endurance, and the courage to stand tall even when the world expected him to fall. Sol stood quietly, looking at the citizens of Zaria. His blood no longer glowed, but the warmth of his spirit remained. He had not come to conquer, not to rule, but to show that humanity could endure where others might give in to fear. The queen watched him from the throne, a rare smile crossing her lips. She understood now that the human was not only alive, but a reminder of what life could be at its best, a spark of courage in a galaxy that often forgot its own light. And so, in the shining halls of the Silver Court, a human stood tall. His flesh wound had healed, but the mark he left on Zaria was permanent. The Empire had seen fear and strength, pain and endurance, doubt and courage.